Under the heading of Better Late Than Never, we are live. Hello, everyone. How are you? Today, in a very special, and by special, I mean late version of my interview series, which I'm now going back to officially calling the Manny Wolf Show. I have with me today THERESA WINN LODE, who was gracious enough to reschedule no less than 2 times in one day because I overbooked my schedule. Give me just 1 second, THERESA and audience. I have to do this this sharing business. So I'm going to share that there. I'm going to start a watch party. Woohoo! And we're going to share it to a group as well. Just any random group. That'll be fine. No, just kidding. In my group. All right. Here we are. We are live. We are here. Better late than never. And I think you guys are going to enjoy this. THERESA is going to be talking about bringing peace and tranquility to your life, which in these times is very helpful.
Absolutely.
Through decluttering or uncluttering, or why don't you say it in your words?
I call it uncluttering. So yeah, I'll just tell you straight up, I've been a professional organizer for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my clients observed that I get a little dopamine hit every time I ran something out to the dumpster. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So I decided I'm not so much of an organizer anymore. I'm a life coach.
Okay.
And I love helping people get rid of clutter.
Yeah.
And yeah, so would you like me to start back with my story on where this little journey began?
I am actually more curious to know what the connection is between clutter and chaos or peace of mind, depending on,
Oh,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Okay, I will. So I am going to preface it with, I've been an organizer.
Mm-hmm.
And people have a lot of stuff. Now,
Mm-hmm.
they've already done research that there is a connection between cortisol, the stress hormone, and a lot of stuff. I don't know anybody who enjoys walking into a cluttered room. You know, they might say, oh, I know
Right.
where everything's at, but there's
Yeah.
a stress level with that. Well, as I was doing organizing, and I kept seeing that this is deeper than the stuff that's
Yeah.
in the closet.
Yeah.
And I did my training as a life coach. I've been through a couple of different life coaching programs, and I began to see that these things, it was so much deeper than the bursting closet or the tchotchke collection that is just out of control.
Right.
And also paralleled with that was my own journey with a fibromyalgia diagnosis. And I was in my early 40s. I had had years of chronic pain. It culminated with this fibromyalgia diagnosis. Then I got a book that changed my life, Healing Back Pain by Dr. John E. Sarno.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the mind-body connection
Yep.
with, and as I dug into this book, well, actually the first time I read it, Manny, I threw it across the living room because I was so outraged that this guy was saying, you're telling me this is in my head?
Yeah. Yeah.
I am a car accident survivor. I have physical trauma. And, but anyway.
That's so funny. Let me just share this. My sister read the same book. She read it after a car accident, and she had basically the same reaction the first time. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, well, it's deeply offensive because our ego is just
deeply offensive.
It's deeply offensive to the ego.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we're trained by this medical, industrial medical monster. Oh, did I say that? You know, that everything's got to be pathologized.
Oh, yeah. 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 So true.
Yeah. So that could be another bunny path. But anyway, I got to this point. I was hurting enough that I decided to look at the book again.
Okay.
And when I read it, it was like, oh my God, this is me on every page. The history of childhood trauma, the personality tendencies. And because of my organizing background, I began to look at these things. What Dr. Sarno was talking about is head clutter. And then I thought, oh my God, this thing is so big, because clutter really comes in 3 flavors as how I see it. There's home clutter, which don't need to explain that too much. Head clutter. How many people, decision fatigue? I mean, was that even a phrase 20 years ago?
Right.
So overloaded with decisions. We're so busy. We're so preoccupied with our phone. Oh, I got a message.
Yeah. Give me just a second.
Exactly. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
So head clutter, which very much feeds into the next area of clutter, which is what I call heart clutter, or I
Yeah.
call this sacred clutter, because to me, this is precious stuff. This is
Mm.
the wounds from childhood. This is the trauma that's never been addressed.
It's the stuff that we feel justified to hold on to, right?
Yeah, well,
Right. We
justified
feel like it
or
identifies us. Or rather,
yes.
let me nail that a little bit. Let me hit the hammer a little bit more on the head for people listening.
Okay.
Until we know better, those things that we hold on to so dear that hurt so bad are a big part of our identity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And here's the rub with that. People don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't even
So
realize
true.
it. It becomes like for me, when I was newly diagnosed, the first temptation is to go in and find a fibromyalgia support group.
Sure.
Oh my Lord, please don't do that, because you're
Yeah.
just going to find other people and that becomes the identity. And the brave part is where you look at that and you go, okay, I'm going to explore these deeper, the heart clutter, the sacred clutter, the
Mm.
trauma that is so filled with shame, especially for women that have
Yeah.
survived sexual assault or
Yeah.
other traumatic shame around that stuff. It's like a bursting closet with a do not enter sign over it.
Yeah.
So I found what I needed to do, because I identified so much with that book. I needed to be brave, and I needed to go in and realize that even though I was saying, yo, my life is perfect and I'm happy, I wasn't being really honest with myself.
Right.
So to be able to draw that courage to go, things aren't going so well right now.
Yeah.
And which leads me to my other H, because I'm a writer and I like alliteration: home, head, heart, and health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you've got this built up clutter in your life, it ends up in your body. So there was a doctor that a doctor shared, and this was like in the 1800s. I'm sorry, I should have had this already, because it's one of my favorite quotes. Basically, it is where there's no vent for the body, where there's no vent for tears, the body will find a way to cry.
Yeah.
I just kind of mangled that quote,
That's
but
still pretty good. I think we can take the essence of that.
and it is absolutely true.
Yeah.
People are willing to accept that when we get embarrassed, we're going to blush. If you
Yeah.
get nervous, you might get butterflies in your stomach. But the disconnect comes where they don't see where you've got the subconscious noise going on, where you're unhappy with your life.
Yeah.
That's going to create health problems eventually. And if you don't pay attention to it, to me, it's a wake up call from your body.
Mm-hmm.
If you're prone to getting headaches, your body is going to keep amping up those signals. Like for me,
Yeah.
it started up with tendonitis here, tendinosis there, a pain there, until it finally culminated to fibromyalgia. And the volume got loud enough that I
Yeah.
realized I need to address this, and I need to get real with these other sources of clutter.
It's interesting to me because this is another point of view, a way of looking at something that I just keep seeing people. How do I want to put this? People realizing over and over again, which is that on some level, everything about our realities is sort of talking to us about our reality.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave that so esoteric for people watching. I can tell that you get what I'm talking about, but
I sure do.
it's also your work. So of course you get
Right.
it. Like, so chronic pain has oftentimes emotional, at least, components. Now, if you jump off a 2-story roof and you push one leg up higher than the other into your hip socket, you're going to have chronic pain for a physical reason. But it's also like you just never find chronic pain that's all for a physical reason without an emotional component for some reason, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's so it's as though part of the challenge laid before us in the human experience is to learn how to sort of see through our own heuristic devices, our own our own tendency to normalize and one of the things that I wind up doing with people a lot, because I work with people who want to speak, who want to become sort of celebrities, who want to, personal brands. And there's always a resistance, of course. There's a fear of the next stage of bigger. And I noticed that at some point with people, oftentimes it's in the beginning, but at some point people always do this thing where they minimize their biggest issues behind this really small language. And I call it hiding your biggest things behind your smallest words.
Yeah, that's good,
right?
Manny.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And I think that you're coming at this same sort of phenomenon from the perspective of, we can tell to an extent what's happening deep inside of you by the environment you create around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Unless people think that this is some kind of a woo-woo thing, it isn't.
And I get that, right? Yeah.
And the science, because one of my defense mechanisms is show me. I should have been born in Missouri. Show me. Yeah. But I do like the credibility, because I think sometimes there gets that woo-woo element where, to me, there's a credibility disconnect.
Yeah.
But the science is bearing this out. This is not woo-woo. This is solid. And did you hear about the ACE study? And if I'm going off on the wrong tangent, feel free to tug me back.
I will.
Can you tell I get a little excited about this stuff?
Well, I'm glad too. I'm glad that you have a deeper level to this. So yeah, tell us about the ACE study.
So the ACE study was done out of Kaiser Permanente in California, and they did this study of morbidly obese women. And they all lost a bunch of weight, and then they gained it back. And some of the researchers got curious, like, well, what's going on with this? When they dug deeper, they found that the commonality with these women, there were 10 risk factors that were assigned. And there were things like, there was an incarcerated loved one. There was food scarcity in the home. There was sexual abuse. There were these 10 criteria, and they determined it's called adverse childhood experience.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You can go to the ACEs Too High website. But what they found out is the higher the score, the greater the risk for health-related issues, like morbid obesity, but also heart disease and cancer. So, and then the other things, the chronic illnesses like fibromyalgia, the things, if it's got syndrome in the name, and it's non-fatal, it's probably rooted in some kind of a trauma, life pressure. Those were the 3 factors that Dr. Sarno identified: was a history of trauma, life stressors, and then perfectionist tendencies. So anyway, back to these women. We've got more people learning about it. There's a wonderful TED Talk by a pediatrician named Dr. Nadine. If you Google Dr. Nadine, you'll find it, on the importance of physicians pulling the camera back and focusing on the whole person, not just either presenting with whatever the symptom is. It's like, what's going on in your life? And they're finding, when you take this wholehearted approach, it's kind of like what I do with organizing. You get to the root of it, and then you're not constantly having to clean out the closet. So it's just,
figuratively and literally.
And that's what I love about the clutter angle on this, because people get it. I can talk about their closet and the stuff that's not needed in there. Well, let's talk about what's in your heart. What's not needed in there anymore? What's holding you back? So,
So I just feel sort of compelled to say this. This idea of our space being a vibrational reflection of our internal space is not new either.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've had experiences literally, and I more than one, where I set out to feng shui my environment and had significant changes for the better happen, either financially or emotionally or romantically, immediately upon doing it. And, I was raised in an environment where pseudo mysticism was sort of revered. And so to me, it was like most of me went, oh, look at that, it's magic or whatever. And then part of me went, I don't know,
Right.
But I did it anyway. But the cool thing, I think, here is that you don't necessarily have to do everything the hard way from the inside out through, you know, years and years of self-awareness and personal development. And Tony Robbins was the first person I heard say this, and he was talking about changing your state. He said, you can change your state by changing your motions and action in your body, or you can change your body by changing your state. It works both ways.
Absolutely.
It's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
And this is what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of just very practical things. I was just on a call this morning, and the coach on that call said, take your meds. Well, what does she mean by meds? Well, meditate.
Yeah.
Meditate, exercise,
Yeah.
diet, and sleep.
Yeah.
Very, very practical things.
Simple, practical things.
Simple things. And, you know, and the other thing that I'll tell clients, like when I was organizing, you know, you don't have to have big wins. Start out with a junk drawer. So start out with one little area in your life. Look at your relationships. Is there some little pivot that you need to do? Is there something that you need to do with your schedule? Is there some little action that you can take? And it's all good. It all works toward the wholehearted life that we want. So
feeling like we've gotten a pretty good handle on a couple of important ideas here. One is that the sort of the chaos in our environments doesn't just happen to us, even though it feels like it's happening to us.
Yes.
We need to be very aware of literally the stories we tell ourselves about it.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Right? Because those are often just rationalization and denial mechanisms.
Darn right. Yep.
So now, and this is really cool for me. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, like, so you said you can start with little wins like the junk drawer. I guess I want to know your philosophy when it comes to the actual work of decluttering. You know, and I guess it's inevitable that you're going to be compared to Marie Kondo here.
I am like the antithesis of Marie Kondo.
Fascinating. I can't wait to hear.
And I love throwing out stuff. And and I think we're Americans. We don't have time to hold every little thing and go, does this spark joy in my, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love her approach and I love the mindfulness.
Yeah.
But I'm like, let's get it done, baby. Let's get that dumpster. I absolutely believe, Manny, that, and this is really cool. When I was organizing, I said, you know, really what I'm doing is spiritual work. It's not about the physical work. It's about holding space for somebody and saying, okay, so let's talk about what's going on. What's the story behind this? And then, like you just mentioned, these stories that we get in our head where we just get locked in this echo chamber. It's not serving us well, but we don't know how to get out. So to have somebody on the outside say, tell me about that. And let's look at it and let's ask some questions and explore and get curious.
So before we go into your sort of practical boots on the ground philosophy, I feel like you sparked something when you said echo chamber. First, I wanted to say it's interesting how social media not personifies, but exaggerates the whole echo chamber thing. Amplifies. But it's important to know that the willingness to sort of enter into an echo chamber comes from within us in the first place.
Yes, it does.
Right? I think that's really interesting. And I've been thinking about that a lot with this pandemic and the way people are, you know, mostly falling neatly into camps about it. And the camps follow a predictable bell curve and all this other stuff. Like sociologists and human behavior theorists must just be giddy watching this all unfold. Not because they wish us harm, but because people, God, you guys, we're so effing predictable.
Yes, we are.
We think we're so fiercely original and unique, and we're just so predictable.
Absolutely.
So you've talked to me a little bit about what's in my heart. You recognize that my clutter and maybe even to the extent of hoarding is a reflection of something happening with me. How do we get down to it now?
how do we get down to it now? That is such a great question. With, first of all, with great kindness and compassion.
Nice. Okay.
That has got to be the rallying cry anytime. I don't look at hoarders as defective.
Come on, Facebook.
Line. Let's see. Are we back?
We're back. You,
Are we back?
I lost you right at defective.
Okay. Okay. So that's when I'm working with a client now as a life coach.
Yeah.
They're not defective.
Right.
They're not broken. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with them. They've had things happen to them.
Yeah.
And they're in pain and they're out of balance.
Yeah.
So my first thing is nothing judgment free, nothing but grace and kindness for them. So here's the thing, Manny, when somebody says, hey, can you help me? I look at this as a great act of bravery.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody raises their hand and says, I'm buried, I'm unhappy, my husband's going to divorce me if I don't get my crap together. And yes, that does happen.
Sure.
So that's the first thing. The next thing that I do now, are we talking about the heart clutter? Or are we talking about getting into the physical stuff?
The physical stuff. The physical stuff. Yeah.
So lots of conversation. And you know what? There are no shortcuts through it. Was it Winston Churchill who said when you're going through hell, keep on going?
Yeah.
And when you are dealing with a big mess like that, you know what? It doesn't happen overnight. Now, maybe they inherited a storage unit from great aunt Matilda.
Sure.
That's usually not the case, and there's not the story involved versus somebody who has piled up all this clutter. So, and really from an organizing standpoint, in that sort of a situation, it's really helpful for somebody to be in therapist because, as you know, I'm a life coach. I am not a therapist. Yeah. I focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. Okay. And there's usually some pathology involved when somebody is hoarding and they're so out of balance.
Yeah.
So team approach is very important. I do lots of questions, a lot of listening. And we just take things one thing at a time. So there is a little bit of that Marie Kondo in there where you do have to touch the stuff because there's no quick fixes for this. I wish there were. I wish we could just say, back up the dumpster and just shovel it all in there.
Right.
Most people, that's a little too much for them. So depending on what pace they want to go, that's my job.
Okay, nice. I imagine that to come into an intensely cluttered, bordering on hoarder type environment and just giving directives about starting, get rid of this, get rid of that, would probably have the reaction of that sort of stereotypical reaction of the autistic kid, and you turn the TV off without warning him and he just freaks out,
meltdown. You got it.
So what's happening there? Let's use some version of an extreme hoarding situation.
Okay.
What's happening that moves the person toward, and it's got to happen incrementally, toward building up this narrative in their head where this is somehow okay. It's okay to live in this kind of, sort of almost a caricature of filth, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that a little bit.
Well, and I'll have to preface, I haven't done a whole lot of hoarding work because to me that's out of my skill set, but I've been in homes like you described where there's rodent damage and there's piles of dirt and clutter. Yeah. And to me, so I recommended therapy. That's my number one thing to address that. Yeah. The other thing is this poor woman, and she's like a textbook case of a lot of pain that's been unresolved.
Yeah.
And what they do is they end up taking comfort in these items. And it's like they build a fortress around themselves.
Right.
And it's a comfort to them. And it isn't until they reach a pivotal moment, like in this one case, this woman was at risk of having her kids taken away from her, or the husband or the wife is going to leave if they don't. So there is usually some sort of an event that will cause, unlike, somebody having a health crisis and going, oh my God, I need to lose 100 pounds. It's the wake up call. So there's usually a wake up call. And one thing that I also learned is if you're calling me about going over to help your Aunt Sally, no, Aunt Sally needs to call me.
Yes. Yeah. I think probably everyone who does
Right? I mean,
any,
as a coach,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Anyone who's
And
done
they
any,
find out you're a coach. Oh, you need it.
yeah.
Oh, go on.
I think anyone who's done any kind of coaching for any amount of time has probably had that, can I pay for a few sessions for so-and-so? And it's such a beautiful thought, and it's so misplaced. and
It
and it,
doesn't work.
it completely misses the truth. Yeah.
Absolutely. Unless
Yeah.
that person is initiating it.
Yeah. It's so true. It's that which we get too easily, we esteem too lightly.
This is true. This is
Yeah.
true. They've got to have, well, that's one of the things. So to a little back to my story a little bit,
Yeah.
when I was doing the organizing, I started doing workshops out of this because I realized that my biggest challenge is helping people to see that they're the best organizer that they will ever see.
Okay.
They are the best one. They know what's operating. So I started doing workshops on this. It's a 4-week workshop that approaches, I mean, very boots on the ground, dealing with heart clutter or home head, heart, and health.
Mm-hmm.
And because now, when you're working one-on-one with people, you can't scale that at all. And I want it to scale it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really enjoying doing that now, and I'm getting great success because I figure if I can help these people to see that they can do it on their own, it's the difference of giving them a fish versus teaching them to fish.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Jackie Gold asks, is a lot of it about control for these people?
Sometimes it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and here's the other thing too, is to remember, scared people or angry people, or, how often is it's fear driving it? It's fear that
Interesting.
drives the control thing. Fear that how about this? Not fear that they're going to have enough, but fear that they are enough. And
Sure.
that classic shame thing that gets
Yeah.
rolling around in our head. So,
And so I really was fascinated by what you said about how there's like a comfort piece to each little thing that they sort of stack on the pile. Is this a situation of needing a proxy for something missing that another human is supposed to co-create with you?
absolutely.
Okay. Wow.
What's
Yeah.
really interesting, Manny, I wish I could remember the paper that I read about the 2 different types of nostalgia.
Okay.
So there's a nostalgia that looks back and gets warm fuzzies from it. Oh God, I remember going camping with the kids, and it was such a wonderful. There's that nostalgia, and then there's a different kind of looking back where you just kind of crawl into a negative sadness. And
yeah, like the melancholy sort of morose nostalgia.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, guess which ones the hoarders are? I mean, I wish I had read this, years ago. It would have been helpful. I just read it maybe a month or so ago. It's like I didn't know there was such a thing, but there absolutely is.
Yeah.
So yeah, they identify with this. One client had a moth-eaten quilt that she could not part with. I mean, it was just it was nasty. So, but what was the story behind it? Well, am I going to dishonor my sister if I throw this? So
Right.
back to the story.
Right.
So I would sit down with him and say, well, let's talk about this quilt. So what do you think your sister's intentions were? And is there another way that we can commemorate your loved one? And then one of my favorite things, a C.S. Lewis quote, is having been is a form of being. And I remind people that just because they're not here on this earth still doesn't mean that they're not still with you. They
Right.
are.
Right.
And by taking that inside out approach, it helps for people to let go of this other stuff.
I can totally see that. And I think it's, in a way, it's funny is not the right word, but it's warm and enjoyable to me, the image of people thinking they're hiring you to help them clean their house. But then when they get into it with you, it's like, I have this image of having deep, meaningful conversations and getting to understanding, and sort of the house just becoming cleaner.
It's true. It's
no, I
true.
get that. I can totally see that.
Absolutely. And what's amazing, and by the way, I think that was actually Carl Jung who said that quote.
Okay.
But anyway, Yeah, and that's why I say it's spiritual work. You can see the change that overcomes people or
Right.
overtakes them,
Yeah.
when that closet is cleaned out and they step
Mhm.
back and they go, "Wow, this is amazing."
Yeah.
And how do you feel inside? Wow, I feel amazing.
Right. Yeah. To me, it's very obvious that it's spiritual work. To oversimplify it, you just never see a person who's sort of self-empowered and balanced and, proactive and in charge of their own thoughts, who then also lives in chaos.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. It
That's
just doesn't,
absolutely true.
and there's a reason for that.
Well, there is, and it's got to first start with that curiosity.
Yeah.
So why am I living this way?
Yeah.
What and then to have the courage to be able to look at the things. One thing that I love to talk about as well, it's and this is a Carl Jung thing, doing shadow work.
Hmm.
We all have a part of our personality that's super ego. Hey, look at me, I'm really good. But inside, we've got these less attractive parts. And
Yeah.
part of the emotional clutter that I'm seeing is we don't want to face that. We want, hey, I'm a great gal. Look at me. I'm perfect. I got all my crap together.
Mm.
But inside, I know the story. I know that I could start a flame war with somebody. I know I can rip somebody apart with criticism in
Mm.
a nanosecond. All these things, I'm not proud of them.
Right.
But to be able to go, but that is part of who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to feed that side of me, but I'm going to accept all the sides of me.
Yeah.
And I think that takes bravery too, to admit that this is part of the repressed feelings and the repressed identification that we deal with. It gets tucked into our subconscious,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's where it can flare up as a chronic health issue. We're
Yeah.
not accepting of ourselves. We're full of, on the outside. So Dr. Sarno called this tension myositis syndrome. And to break it down, it just means basically your muscles are tense.
Yeah.
And it is a physiological response. You've got your subconscious going, I can't accept this. I can't go there. That's a dark, shadowy place.
Hmm.
So you just repress it down. And what happens is those physical symptoms are actually serving a distraction to keep you from admitting that maybe you're not happy with your
Right.
life.
Right.
Maybe you hate your job. And so that's where, if somebody's having a pain issue, it's like, oh, that's awesome. That is an awesome invitation. It's not awesome that you're hurting. I get that. Nobody
That's
likes
not what we're saying. Yeah.
It's not what we're saying, but it's an invitation
Yeah.
to go, what's going on a deeper level here? Are there
Right.
other levels of clutter in my life
Yeah.
that's driving this carpal tunnel or plantar fasciitis or whatever
Mhm.
else it might be?
Yeah. And if you're hearing this and you're feeling offended, it's probably a good indication that you're a little bit, you need to check your own stories.
Amen, brother. Amen. I always say the quicker the what?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
The more reason of you might need to do a little work there. Well, and I use that as myself too. When I get my panties in a wad over something, or I get instantly offended, it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
where did that come from?
What
Why was I
happened
just
there?
triggered that way? Why do I want to throat punch you right now?
We saw quite a bit of that the other day together, didn't we?
That was a case study, and
I was like,
that was
wow.
hilarious.
Yeah, it was hilarious. And it's interesting. This is off down the rabbit trail just a little bit, but it's interesting because I don't often wind up in the crosshairs of people like that. And it's not that I'm afraid to state my opinions.
Yeah.
It's just there was something extremely triggering about that simple question I asked,
Yeah.
What I found was it takes a lot of resolve to stand in the crosshair, even when they're clearly off base,
Right.
And so I guess that could tie into our conversation here, insofar as I could support people in it is easy to go hide
Mm-hmm.
and not as easy to stand in face to face with whatever the discomfort is.
Absolutely.
So I didn't intend this to go here, but let me give those of you listening who can relate to what Theresa is saying, let me give you permission for the past, not for the present, but for the past, that maybe, your environment is reflecting something you're not ready to look at. And I didn't plan on being able to say this either, but I want to strongly recommend that you reach out to Theresa. We don't know each other, by the way, before this call. We're just sort of Facebook acquaintances. I'm not a shill in the audience for her. You know what I mean? And I didn't know that she was going to have such a holistic approach that made so much sense to me. But you do.
Well, thank
you. I don't give out gratuitous, fluffy compliments. You earned it. You earned it by being able to really hang here with me. So thank you, actually. And if anybody is really connecting with this, I haven't asked her if this is okay, but I'm just going to say, reach out to her. You have a tremendously soft heart.
Oh, thank you.
You're very, very welcome. That I can feel immediately. And I was thrilled to learn, to discover little by little through this conversation that your approach is not about getting out the broom in the dustpan as much as it's about really helping people to sort of understand what's going on inside of them. That's just really, really amazing. So I want to thank you so much, A, for being flexible today.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Yeah. And B, for what turned out to be just a wonderful conversation.
I have enjoyed it very much, Manny. You are a joy on Facebook, and it's great to meet you kind of IRL, but
yeah, pseudo.
Right.
Well, likewise. So thank you very much. Guys, please share this out. I just feel like this one is an unexpectedly potent message. So please, if you've enjoyed this, share this. That's simple.
And and if I can just put in one little plug, not for me.
You bet.
But to look at this COVID thing and the quarantine, this is an opportunity not to knock it out of the park with your goals and blah, 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 blah. Because for a lot of people, that's their go-to distraction. So I really want to, my rallying cry is live simply, love deeply. And a lot of the activity that we do is a hindrance to that. So I encourage your audience, take this time as COVID is the time to do some inner work and to think about, what can I unclutter from my schedule, not just from my home, but from my schedule, from my heart, to use this downtime is an invitation from the universe to say, wow, it's time to reset some things. It
is. And just as a little sort of an add-on, usually invitations from the universe are a bit uncomfortable.
Oh, they suck. They just
say that. So let's go through quickly and just shout out to some people before we sign off. Let's see. Carol, Jackie, Philip, Jamie, Helen, Dave, Carol again, John, Sumith, Danielle, Mitch. Looks like there are a few other people coming on. Amanda, did I say Amanda already? And another Jeff. Guys, please share this. I beg of you. It's such an easy thing for you to do, and it means so much to us. It's just a press of a button for you. So, Theresa, thank you so much.
Manny, thank you so much. This is
my
awesome.
Pleasure.
Have a great uncluttered day.
There you go. Bye-bye.